Hi everyone, Susan Storm here, and today I want to talk about how INFPs respond to stress. We want to look at what creates stress for INFPs, what grip stress looks like, and explore some ways for INFPs to cope that won't make things worse. If you are not sure who I am, I'm the founder of a website called psychologyjunkie.com and a certified MBTI practitioner. So first, let's talk about what INFPs are like when they're not stressed. INFPs are very open-minded, flexible, empathetic, and imaginative people. They're driven by a strong sense of right and wrong, and they're always checking with themselves to make sure that they're living in alignment with their personal values. INFPs believe in marching to the beat of their own drum. They're very questioning about socially imposed standards, and they believe in doing what they feel is right wholeheartedly, even if it means they're going against the grain, or even if it means they're a misfit or rocking the boat in some way. That said, they tend to be very flexible, gentle, compassionate people. They don't really believe in imposing their will on others. Instead, they like to gently exert influence by following their values and thereby creating a ripple effect in society around them. They're often able to see connections that other people don't. They enjoy looking for possibilities and thinking outside the box. They're also drawn to diversity of people and like getting to know people from many different walks of life and getting to understand many different points of view. Things that energize INFPs include being able to stand up for causes that matter to them, being able to help people that they feel compassion for, having their feelings and their values affirmed by others, having meaningful, deep conversations, being able to imagine, create, and explore beyond the bounds of the ordinary, and being appreciated for the individuals they are, getting specific compliments. Now, what creates stress for INFPs? Let's take a look at that. One of the things that creates stress is having a lot of tasks and deadlines on their plate. If they have to switch between many different roles and move from one task to another regularly, it can really overwhelm them because their natural mode of processing is all about understanding why something matters to humanity, why something matters to them. They're very ethics-driven people. They want what they're doing to have some sort of human benefit. And so if what they're doing is very impersonal and they have a lot to do of it, they can feel so uninspired and stressed just because they're not stimulating the part of them that gets them into a flow state, that introverted feeling part of them. When INFPs are doing work they believe in, work that they feel has beneficial ripple effects for humanity or animals or whatever cause they're interested in, then they can be workaholics. They can work so hard in pursuit of excellence in that field. If their work doesn't have any personal meaning to them, they can lose steam very fast. Another thing that can be really stressful is very rigid time structures and a very busy, planned out schedule. INFPs need a lot of unstructured time in order to feel like they can get into their flow state, in order to feel like they can be creative and imagine and do their best work. INFPs very much believe in creating an amazing finished product. Whenever they work on something, they'd rather commit to excellence than do just good enough and get it done faster. So INFPs tend to be very perfectionistic in their work and hate feeling like they're being rushed. They also need to feel like the day ahead of them is not completely planned out or the week ahead of them. They really get stressed when they look at their calendar and just see that they have appointments and obligations all through the week. That kind of a schedule where everything's planned out and all their time is already accounted for and scheduled is super stressful for them. They absolutely hate that. Another thing that creates stress for INFPs is conflict. INFPs tend to be conflict averse. Many INFPs I've spoken with feel like they absorb other people's feelings or that they struggle to articulate their thoughts when they're in a conflict situation. Another thing that creates stress is not getting enough alone time. INFPs are introverts. They need to have ample alone time to recharge, to get into their thoughts, to reflect, to do their best imagining. Super, super important. Another thing that I've been hearing a lot lately from INFPs that create stress for them is political frustration, a political climate that's very demanding of conformity. It doesn't matter what side of the political aisle they're on, although I've heard definitely more of this recently. If INFPs feel like politically the world is going in a direction that is hurting or harming other people, that can create a lot of existential stress and dread for them. So I know lately I've been getting a lot of emails from INFPs who are struggling under the current political climate that we're in. Lastly, a thing that really creates a lot of stress is feeling like there's no scope for the imagination. INFPs need to feel like they have some mental freedom to create possibilities, to envision the future, to imagine how things could be, to dream. Daydreaming tends to be a really big part of the INFP's life. So if they feel like there's no openness or scope for imagination, they can feel so uninspired and drained. And then anything else that they have to do just feels like it's adding more heaviness, overwhelm, and frustration to their day. So if you are in a relationship with an INFP and you're one of those people who kind of feels like you have to constantly bring them down to earth and limit their imagination or remind them that maybe their ideas are outlandish or whatever it is, just keep that in mind. An INFP can easily come up with dozens of possibilities before they have their morning breakfast, and they need to be able to explore those ideas. INFPs who are stifled from exploring those ideas or are constantly put down for that imaginative side tend to feel extremely unfulfilled and tend to become very imbalanced. So for INFPs, when they're feeling down, one of the most important things they can do is find ways to encourage their imagination, to think outside the box or dream up possibilities. And when it comes to helping other people, INFPs often do their best work when they're encouraging other people to imagine. All right, so what happens when an INFP experiences everyday stress? When an INFP experiences everyday stress, they tend to become more true to type. So they will lean more into their introverted side, which means they'll probably pull away from people more and seek out alone time more. They'll lean more into that intuitive side. They might try to dream up some possibilities in order to cope. They might try to think outside the box or do something creative. They might lean into their feeling side and become more attuned to their own feelings, more aware of how things are affecting them. They might need to take time alone to process their feelings, to write them down or journal or listen to music that they feel aligns with their feelings. If stress continues and gets really extreme or really chronic, then what can happen is they can fall into what's called the grip. The grip is when a person overuses their dominant function, and over time they wear that function out. So for INFPs, the dominant function is called introverted feeling. That's their heroic function. It's the function that they tend to live and breathe without really having to put a lot of effort into it. And that function is all about knowing what aligns with your values and making choices that make you feel aligned in a conscious way in your heart. Introverted feeling is about assessing what's right or wrong for you rather than what society is saying is right or wrong. So when INFPs experience stress, they tend to try to access their heart. What feels right or wrong to me? How am I feeling about this? Let me write it down. Let me process it. Let me find music that aligns with what I'm feeling. If stress just continues and introverted feeling is not solving any of their problems, eventually it can get worn out. And then what happens is extroverted thinking can take the wheel of the personality type. And then all of a sudden, INFPs become far more critical. They feel an incessant urge to just fix things, to complete tasks, to get their lives in order. Now, another way that they can fall into the grip is not by necessarily overusing their dominant function, but by having to use their inferior function too much. So again, in this situation at work, say they have a whole bunch of tasks that require a strong focus on objectivity and productivity and metrics and return on investment. They're having to use extroverted thinking, which is the INFP's inferior function. They're having to use that a lot. That can also push them into a grip experience. So when INFPs are in the grip, they stop looking like typical INFPs. They lose that easygoing, open-minded, imaginative, empathic quality that INFPs are so famous for. And instead, they become much more critical. They become much more focused on tasks. They start to see errors everywhere and projects that need to be finished. They feel this urge to just fix something, to complete something. They become more cynical and distrustful, probably more negative. They can also feel very depressed and hopeless. They might blurt out harsh, cynical remarks that they regret. There's less of a filter on their negative thoughts towards other people than there typically would be in their day-to-day life. Generally, they're very careful about what they say and the impact it might have on other people. But when they're stressed, they just blurt things out. And then later on, they just beat themselves up for it. You start to look more like unhealthy ETJ types. Now, what can INFPs do when they're in this state of stress? What can they do to reach equilibrium and get back to their normal mode of functioning? First things first, INFPs need to be able to take care of their physical senses. A lot of times we jump right into the cognitive ways of taking care of stress, but it's really important to take care of the physical. So focus on taking some big, deep breaths. You can do the 4-7-8 technique where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, and then exhale for 8, or box breathing. Getting your breathing under control can help a lot because when you're really stressed, your body doesn't necessarily know that you aren't being chased by a tiger in the savannah, right? It doesn't really know the difference between what you're experiencing and an actual physical threat. And so, what tends to happen is we tend to almost hyperventilate, and our body floods us with this cortisol. And there's a whole bunch of physiological things that happen that I'm not going to get into right now. But when we start learning to work on our breathing, to regulate our breathing and take deep breaths, it tells our mind, hey, I'm not in danger right now. And it helps your whole body to calm down. It's kind of like tricking your brain into believing that you're not as stressed as you really feel. It helps you to have a clearer state of mind as well. So, learning to take those deep breaths and to really prioritize that when you feel stressed is very important. Then you should do a full body check in. Am I feeling sore? Do I need to stretch? Sometimes for INFPs, we can be very in their heads, in their hearts, but not as much in their bodies. So, taking care of that when you feel signs of stress can be very helpful. It can help you to realize how much of your stress is physically related. And being able to take care of your body helps you to regulate your nervous system quite a bit more. So assess your body. Are you feeling sore? Do you need to stretch? Do you need to get up and move around a little bit? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Have you had enough rest? Take a physical assessment of how you're doing and what physical needs might be going unmet. So that's always what I suggest first for really any personality type who is experiencing stress. Secondly, get some time alone. INFPs, a lot of times when they're stressed, they just need to step away from people for a little while, get a chance to just take some deep breaths, to organize their thoughts, to organize their feelings, to feel like they can punch a pillow or scream or just cry and feel like no one's judging them or analyzing them. Very, very important. Another way for them to reduce stress is to do something creative. A lot of INFPs feel like they can snap out of stress if they can tap into their intuition. So this could be doing something like painting and doing art without any expectation that it'd be really good or anything like that, but just doing it because they want to. It could be like stream of consciousness writing, like just writing down all their feelings on paper or in a journal. Playing a musical instrument, listening to music, singing at the top of their lungs, something creative can really help them to process their feelings and then get to a healthier state of mind. This can also help them to gain new insights and to utilize their imagination, which is really key in helping them to feel like they're tapping back into their normal state of mind. INFPs often gain significant insights through creativity. And so this is just something that helps them feel like the future is alive, like the future is full of possibility, like there's more they can do, things that inspire them. And that's so important when they're feeling down. After they've had some time to reach equilibrium, to calm down, to get some time alone, then it can be really helpful for them to talk to a trusted friend, somebody who's not going to jump in with a bunch of logic and advice that they didn't ask for. That tends to make things worse if you're dealing with an INFP who's in the grip. Then throwing a lot of advice at them and trying to logically analyze the situation can make things worse. If they're in the grip, they're already in that extroverted thinking overload. They're already trying to logically analyze everything. They're already trying to focus on projects and tasks and fixing things. So if you try to lean into that and bring them more into that, it's going to further push them into the grip rather than pull them out. So definitely refrain from giving a lot of logical advice to INFPs when they're in a state of grip stress. What they need when they're talking to someone is someone who can rephrase what they're hearing back to them, who can just simply listen and be with them and affirm their feelings. A lot of times, just simply being quiet and being present is the most important thing. And then again, letting them know what you're hearing and letting them know that, hey, it makes sense. I can understand why what you're feeling would be so upsetting for you. Affirming and validating their emotions without feeling like you have to offer your critique or advice on it. For INFPs who are alone, sometimes what helps is refocusing on what is right rather than what is wrong. Gratitude journaling has been a proven way for many people to deal with stress and to have a more positive outlook. That said, we don't want to be pushing toxic positivity here. While I think that being positive and focusing on what you're grateful for is super, super important and very healthy, don't beat yourself up if you need a little time to wallow also. Sometimes you just need a little bit of time to just get through your feelings before you try to focus on putting a positive spin on things. So go ahead and listen to that sad song and cry or scream into a pillow or punch a pillow or vent to someone about your feelings. That's totally okay. Don't feel like you've got to immediately jump into positivity, because sometimes that can just make you feel worse if you haven't had a little time to get through the negative feelings first. Now, I want to end this by saying the grip isn't always a bad thing. The grip can help remind us, specifically for INFPs, that they do have this very task-focused side, that they have a competitive side, that they can see things very objectively and logically. And sometimes it can be a wake-up call for INFPs to incorporate maybe a little bit more of extroverted thinking into their lives. When INFPs develop a healthy connection to extroverted thinking, then when they have those grip experiences, it tends to not be as extreme. If you are an INFP and you're taking little pockets of time every day to just simply focus on tasks and projects and productivity and structure and organization, then when you're having stress and that grip rears its ugly head, it tends to not be as extreme or out of control. Think about it this way. If you have a child, right, and you don't spend any time with them, you don't spend any time disciplining them, training them, talking to them, loving them, supporting them, listening to them. If you're not really investing in that child, then when that child shows up, they're probably going to be a bit out of control, misbehaved, irrational, and rambunctious, right? Even well trained kids can show up that way sometimes. With your inferior function, with extroverted thinking, if you don't spend any time accessing that function, if you're constantly pushing it aside because you don't enjoy doing extroverted thinking activities, then when it shows up in a state of grip stress, it's going to seem obnoxious, irrational, immature, out of control, and extreme. But if you're spending time with that function, a little bit of time when you're not stressed and you're just giving a little space to breathe, when it shows up, you can be like, oh, hey, this is that part of me that I've spent a little time with. I know this function fairly well. I know how to use it so that when you're in the grip of it, you're not as extreme or irrational because you actually have some sort of relationship with that function. You've actually worked on developing it to some degree. Now, I'm not saying every INFP out there should go create a bunch of spreadsheets and color-coded pie charts or anything like that to get their life together. What I am saying is find some simple ways to use extroverted thinking on stress-free days. If you're calm, if you're feeling like you can handle it, you can look at a part of your day that maybe you're not feeling great about. Like maybe you wake up every morning, roll over and scroll your phone for 30 minutes and you don't feel great about that. Instead of that, you could create a 30-minute wake-up plan for your morning that puts you in a better mood, makes you feel more inspired. You could say, well, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I'm going to do is read a chapter from this book, or get up and dance for 15 minutes, or go outside and take a short walk, or take a shower. Like you could create a list of things that really make you feel inspired. Extroverted thinking is very much focused on structuring your day to reach objectives that you're looking for. It's very much about looking at things objectively rather than being totally guided by your inner emotional state or your gut. So it can look like when you have a strong feeling about something, objectively critiquing that to see whether or not that feeling is grounded in reality, or see whether or not that feeling actually makes logical sense and stands up to scrutiny. I'm not saying, like I said, don't do this all the time, but when you're feeling stress-free, give your extroverted thinking side, because it is part of you, give it some time to breathe. Then when it shows up during the grip, you probably will have better reactions with it. If you'd like to find out more about INFPs, you can find out a lot more on my website at psychologyjunkie.com. I've also written a book called The INFP Understanding the Dreamer, which has tons of information about INFPs. So definitely check that out. If you are not sure about your personality type or you'd like to understand it more, I offer one-on-one Zoom sessions where I can help you clarify your type, or I can help you understand the cognitive functions of your personality type in a more personal way so that it's not so confusing. So I'll leave a link for that in the description. And if you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.